sixth grade. So here is your instructional video for the day. We're going to go over your do now that was in your digital notebook. Those of you at school, you didn't have a bell ringer sheet this week because I didn't print one. But just go ahead and pay attention so you know, and you can, because all the information that I give you is always good. Okay, so the picture shows a wind-up toy frog. After winding the toy frog flips over. This toy demonstrates what kind of energy. So yesterday we went over the types of energy and what they are. Remember, light energy is also called electromagnetic. This is any kind of waves. Thermal energy is heat energy. Electrical energy is from the movement of electrons to make electricity. And then mechanical energy is movement energy. So if you read the question again, it's a wind-up toy, so you're winding the toy and then it flips over. So it's moving, so the answer here would be mechanical. Okay, so today you are taking some notes. This is Wednesday. Okay, so today you are taking some notes. Those of you at home, you can watch this video and take notes from the video, or those slides are in your Google Classroom digital notebook for you to take. You're only writing the notes that are in red. Those of you at home are going to take a picture and attach it to today's assignment, and then you can do the worksheet that's in your work. Okay, so those of you in school, you guys are going to take notes in your science notebooks. You are also only going to write what is in red. If you don't have a science notebook, myself or Miss Williams will give you a piece of paper to write on, but make sure you get a notebook because you will need it. Definitely get a notebook by Monday. Even if you are at home, if you do not have a notebook for science, go ahead and get one because we are doing notes, okay? And I do expect those notes to be attached to your assignments. So again, you're only writing what's in red, and we are going to review we are going to learn the differences between conduction, convection, and radiation. So what your title is going to be heat transfer. That's your title for your notes today is heat transfer. We're going to be talking about the different ways that heat is transferred. And those ways are called conduction, convection, and radiation. And of course, if you need to pause the video while you're watching it to write these things down, please do so. So there's three ways that heat is transferred. Okay, and I just said them. Radiation, conduction, and convection. So we're going to talk about what each one of those things are. Okay, so first we got to know what thermal energy transfer is. So here's something in red you need to write. So thermal energy transfer is heat moving from a warmer object to a cooler object. This is known as thermal heat transfer. Okay, so what thermal heat transfer is, remember that thermal energy is heat and transfer means to move. So it's going to be heat moving, and that's exactly what thermal energy transfer is it's the heat moving from one object to another object. So like think about when you put a spoon in, let's say, a hot water, or like you're stirring something in the pot that you are cooking. Okay, when you pull that a metal spoon, when you pull that metal spoon out, what does it feel like? Okay, so when you put it in, it's a cool spoon, so it's cool to touch. But when you put it into like boiling water or hot soup and you take it out, the spoon is hot also because the heat was transferred. And so this is called thermal energy transfer. And there's three ways that this happens. And I want you to write those three things down. Okay, so there's three ways that heat can move. It can move through conduction, convection, or radiation. Okay, and we're going to go over what each one of those means. Again, if you need to pause, please pause here so you can write. Okay, so first one is conduction. So go ahead and write what that is in your notebook. So conduction is heat transferred from one particle to another by direct touch. So the way I remember conduction is because it has a D in the middle, and direct touch starts with D also. Um, so conduction is through direct touch, meaning the objects have to be touching for that heat to be transferred. And heat always transfers from the hotter object to the cooler object. Okay, so conduction equals contact. That's the wrong thing. Okay, so like if you put your pot on the stove, the heat from the stove is touching, or the stove is touching the pot, so that is conduction. Okay, conduction is anytime those objects are touching. And again, heat always is going to go from the hotter object to the cooler object. So again, if you need to pause here to write the rest of this, please do. Have you ever touched a metal spoon in a pan of boiling water only to be surprised by how hot it is? So, like if you drink hot chocolate and it's cold outside, and I was drinking some over Christmas break, but I stirred the hot chocolate with the spoon, and then I pulled the spoon out and tried to like sip it, and the spoon is so hot. And it's because of conduction. The heat transferred from the hot water to the cool spoon. Or if you're eating soup when you're sick, maybe, or if you're eating like ramen, um, you put the spoon or the fork into the soup and you pull it out and it's warm. Okay, it's because metals are good conductors, and that means they absorb. Okay. All right, so conduction example. A piece of cheese melts as the heat is transferred from the meat to the cheese. So that's a great example. So the meat is cooked, so it's hot, and then you put the cheese that's cool onto the burger and it melts because that heat transferred from the hot burger to the cool cheese and it melted. Okay, so convection. So go ahead and write what convection means. So convection is the movement that transfers heat within the fluids and air, so gas or water. Okay, so convection is not through touch. Convection is through either the air or through water. Okay, so let's see. And these usually happen in what's called convection currents. And convection is equal to vents through liquid and air particles. So go ahead and write what's in red. Convection usually occurs in a circular pattern. So this is kind of like our weather. Okay, so our weather is caused by the heat of the sun warms up our earth, and the heat is transferred through the air, which is called convection. And so the warmer air rises, and then it cools down and it sinks, and then it warms up again and rises again. So it goes in what these circular patterns here, and you're going to learn more about that in 8th grade. But convection usually happens in a circular pattern because the warm air or the warm water or air rises and then it cools and sinks again. So it goes in a circular pattern. Again, if you need to pause here, please do so you can write what is in red. Okay, so some examples. Have you ever noticed that the air near the ceiling is warmer than the air near the floor, or that water in the pool is cooler at the deep end? So those are really good examples. If you have a 2-story house, like my sister has a 2-story house, and they always have the AC at like 60. So it's really cold in their house. But then you go upstairs and it's warm because heat rises. And as it rises, it starts to cool and then it'll come down. So the cool air will come down, and that's why the bottom story is really cold, but the top story is really really hot. And then the other good example was the pool. So if you guys have ever been in a pool or maybe to Hurricane Harbor, if you start at the wave pool and it is like this deep, the water is really, really warm. But then you go deeper in and it gets cooler and cooler. That's because the surface is is at the top and it's easier to heat. And then once you get further down, that's where the cool water has sunk. And then uh, once it warms up again, it'll come up. So air movement, water. So water boils once it gets hot, right? You've seen water boil. And what that happens because the water is turning. Okay, so the warmer water is going up and then it cools down at the surface and it goes back down. So let's move on to radiation. So go ahead and write the radiation, definition. Okay. Radiation is the transfer of energy by electromagnetic waves or light. Remember, light is electromagnetic energy. So this is through light, like the sun. Okay, radiation does not require matter to transfer thermal energy. So it does not require air or water. It just is transferred through waves. So a good example is the sun. Sun rays are a type of, I think, your ultraviolet ray, and then your microwaves. Your microwaves use microwaves to heat up your food. Another good example is your phones. Your phones use radio waves to send signals to other phones so you guys can hear each other. Or text messages, it sends those things through radio waves. And so those are all examples of radiation. Radiation is through waves. You'll find out more about the different types of waves and what they're used for in 8th grade. But just know that radiation is through waves, and those waves are invisible mostly, except for light, visible light. And those waves can transfer heat. Oh, didn't know that. Was there? Okay, so radiate, there's another red word for you. Radiation equals radiates. So it's going to, the heat escaping from the sun is a good example of radiation. Okay, so pause it here if you need time to write, and I'm going to move on. Okay, so so it does also can come from other sources besides the sun. If you've ever been near a fire, maybe a fire place, or if you've ever been camping or had a bonfire, and you're cooking marshmallows or hot dogs, you're sitting too close to the fire and you're enjoying the warmth, or you get too hot, and your skin gets really warm. It's because that heat transfer is occurring through those waves of the fire. You're not touching it, so that's conduction, and then it's not through water or the air necessarily, so it's not convection, it's through radiation. So examples of radiation is fire, heat lamps, or the sun. Okay, so just a short review. There's 3 ways. You have transferred in rays or waves, energy from the sun, and warms the earth. What do you think that one is? Between the 3, conduction, convection, and radiation. You can say it out loud. It is, so the next one is transfer of heat or energy that happens when the molecules bump into each other. The objects must be touching. Oh, it has the answer. Conduction is touching. Conduction is touching. Transfer of heat by the flow of material. This is air and cool air or water. And so there we go. Okay, so those are the difference between conduction, convection, and radiation. So your assignment is today is to look at pictures and identify what is happening in those pictures, either radiation, conduction, or convection. So here is your assignment, and those of you in school are going to be doing this on paper, but you have these different pictures, and the pictures are here, okay? And you're just going to identify what type of heat transfer is occurring. Is it radiation, convection, or conduction? Okay, remember conduction is through touch, convection is through the air, and radiation is through waves. So the sun, fire, or what was the other example it gave? Let me go back. Heat lamps. Okay, so air, and water is convection. Touch is conduction, and radiation is through the sun or fire. Okay? All right, so go ahead and start on your assignments. We will, if you have any questions, let me know. And if you don't have questions, have a great day. Oh, grades are due today, so make sure this is going into the grade book, so make sure you get it done tonight because I am going to be doing grades today. So make sure you get this done, please. And any other missing work you have.